Hello everyone, Jai Hind and good morning. Welcome to the platform of StudyIQ IAS in English. Let's see who is live right now with us. If you're live, please type in the message and let me know that you're watching the session live. Again, today I am in front of you. My name is Bhanwar Singh, MX India 115th course and qualified civil services in 2012. And today again we'll be going through the complete Hindu analysis. Siddharth, hello and good morning. Rishi Pandey. Who else is here? Please type in the message and let me know that you're watching the session live along with me on the platform. Anuj Kumar, good morning. All right, who else is here? Please type in the message and let me know that you are watching the session live. So today again, once again, we'll be doing the complete Hindu analysis, and today is the International Labour Day, and along with this, we are also celebrating Buddha Purnima as well. So I wish you all happy Buddha Purnima, and as well as I wish you for the International Labour Day as well. All right, so when it comes to today's newspaper, so there are lots of articles which are very important for the preparation for the civil services. So we'll be going through all of them, and we'll be moving ahead and we'll be discussing all these articles, their implication, as well as what all things we need to understand or keep in mind while preparing for the civil services. Tenu, good morning. Vishwa, good morning. Who else is here? Please type in the message and let me know that you're watching this session live. All right. So there are important topics that I have picked. These are 9 important topics that will be moving ahead and we'll be discussing. The first one is about the Iran and the Hormuz crisis and even the nuclear standoff that is there between US and Iran that we are seeing right now. The second news that we'll be covering is about the exit of UAE from the OPEC, and this pertains to energy security. The third news that will be moving ahead and we'll be discussing is about the labor codes and the Noida strike as well. Good morning, AV, and Ramu, good morning. So this is the third news that we'll be covering, and this is again important because today is International Labour Day. So again, it becomes important that we dive into these different labor reforms that had been done in the country. And hello, Night Sky and Krishna, good morning. All right, then we'll be talking about the India-New Zealand free trade agreement as well. All right, we have spoken about it yesterday also. And again, we'll be seeing it in the new perspective. At the same time, we'll be talking about India's fiscal federalism. That is, there is a news about the revenue deficit states. So we'll be talking about it as well, and also what different deficits are. What are the primary deficit? What is meant by primary deficit? What is meant by revenue deficit? And even by the fiscal deficit. Then we'll be talking about the Northeast peace. That is, Mizoram had been declared insurgency free by the Chief Minister of Mizoram. Kundan, good morning. All right, we'll be also talking about the PIL reform. Again, there is an article that will be moving ahead and discussing. And nice sky, that's nice. We are also just starting the day. And then we'll be talking about green methanol, where the invasive weed will be used to convert it into a green menthol. That is again a very important news related to environment, and as well as it relates to the energy security as well. All right, and then we'll be talking about the first Jammu and Srinagar railway as well as Ladakh as well, where Home Minister Amit Shah is visiting. So these are the important news that we'll be covering in our today's session. But moving ahead, let's see the quote for the day. The quote for the day is that the strength of a democracy is measured not just by its ballot boxes, but by dignity it extends to its last worker. So this is the quote that you can use while writing the answers in your mains. Now coming to the first news, that is about Iran, and over here it says, can you solve me a maths question? Devajoy, maths is not my subject. All right, maths is not my subject. If you want, I can try, but again, it's not my subject. All right, so it is about the Iran. It vows to safeguard its nuclear capabilities. Over here in this news, we'll be discussing how or what the Iran have said. But at the same time, there is another important news that you will find in the Hindu of today's edition, and that is the empty LNG ship from Dahej. It heads into the Strait of Hormuz for loading in the UAE Das Island. Again, both the news are important, and it connects to the West Asian crisis that we have, or that is right now in front of us. Now coming to the perspective or the context, last few days onward, so many new admissions. Yes, Zenith, we have seen. All right. So when it comes to the standoff that we are seeing over here, so Iran's supreme leader, he have said, the ballot is stronger than the bullet, right? My favorite quote, which you said in our previous class. Yeah, the ballot is obviously stronger than the bullet. Over here, what has happened when it comes to the West Asian crisis is that Iran have said, and Iran's supreme leader, he have said that or vowed that they will safeguard the nuclear and the missile capabilities of Iran. All right. At the same time, US have maintained the blockade of Iran-linked vessels in the Gulf of Oman. Over here, the US have said that Iran proposes that they will ease the Hormuz control through the Pakistan channel. However, I don't know what is going on. Iran is saying that they are bent towards, moving ahead when it comes to the nuclear program. At the same time, US is saying that they are moving ahead, and until and unless there is a deal that happens between both the nations regarding the nuclear program, they will not lift the blockade that is here. All right. At the same time, what it is doing is that it is increasing the price of the crude oil, and you can see that the Brent crude, it spiked to 7% to $126.41 per barrel, and it is the 4-year high that we are seeing right now. All right, the ceasefire had been in the place since 8th of April, but at the same time, the stronghold or the choke of the Strait of Hormuz, it is also still intact that we are seeing right now. Now, when it comes to Strait of Hormuz, we have discussed it before as well that this is just 21-mile wide passage, and near about 20% of the global oil it passes through it. And when it comes to Iran, please remember this. It is very important that when it comes to Iran, Iran is the signatory or party to NPT. All right, Iran is signatory of NPT, that is Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Now, when it comes to Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and what the Supreme Leader have said, all right, Mustafa, he have said that they will, safeguard the nuclear capabilities of Iran. So then over here, you can understand that there is the obligation of Iran under the NPT or Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty that is being contested over here. All right, in the Gulf wants security. Why don't India offer security to them by recruitment and deployment of forces there? We do not provide security to the other nations. All right, every nation is sovereign. All right, good morning, Satya. Thank you. And in between Iran and Oman Peninsula, the Musandam, I didn't get you. Good morning. All right. All right. Okay, so it is very important to note over here that I said that when it comes to the Iran is the signatory of NPT or Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Now, when it comes to JCPOA, that is Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, it is also called as the nuclear treaty that was there between US and Iran. This was, this was in 2015. There were various deliberations and even negotiations that were happening, but then US withdrew from it in 2018. All right, after the withdrawal of USA from the treaty, Iran have started or reduced the compliance of the treaty and started moving ahead with the nuclear enrichment programs. Now, over here, one more important thing is that you have to see that when it comes to UAE, I have told you that UAE have exited the OPEC. All right, UAE have exited the OPEC, and over here it is starting the export via the Habshan Fujairah pipeline bypass that bypasses the Hormuz. All right. Good morning, Reshma. Yes, right. All right. So this is again important news that UAE, which have declared that they are exiting the OPEC. All right. UAE, which have declared that they are exiting the OPEC, they have said over here, they will be exporting via Habsha and Fujairah pipeline that bypasses the complete Strait of Hormuz. So over here, you can see that over here, this is Habshan. All right, it connects to Abu Dhabi, that is UAE, and then it is up to Fujairah. All right, over here we have port of Fujairah, that is primary crude export hub outside the strait. This is the strait over here. All right, this was this had been choked when it comes to this complete strait. So this Habshan Fujairah crude oil pipeline, it bypasses the complete Strait of Hormuz. And again, this would be very important because UAE have UAE have just left the OPEC nations. All right, so again, it is very important. Yes, Fujairah connects Hormuz with Bab al-Mandeb. Yes, it is over here. You can see Fujairah. All right, and this is the, this is over here, not Bab al-Mandeb, this is Strait of Hormuz. All right, Satya. So this is Strait of Hormuz and Bab al-Mandeb is not over here. Fujairah is here. Please remember this. Good morning, Shiva. All right. Now, coming to the next news that is here. It is about, again, the exit of UAE from the OPEC. And this is the editorial column, or it is in the editorial column that you will find this news in today's The Hindu. All right, now over here, UAE have withdrawn itself from the OPEC and it was member since 1967. All right, since 1967, it was the member of the OPEC nation, and also it became member of OPEC Plus when the OPEC Plus was started in 2016. Now, when it comes to UAE, so UAE was, as per the article, UAE was it is the fourth largest producer of the OPEC. And at the same time, it was also the third largest exporter when it comes to the OPEC nations. All right. Over here, what had resulted in UAE, leaving the OPEC was the frustration with the Saudi set. The Saudi Arabia used to set the production quotas, and UAE was upset and frustrated with the quotas that were there. And UAE has the spare capacity. It wants to fund its AI and diversification projects, and that is why it wants to gain more of money. All right, more of money so that it can build its own, complete infrastructure. And that is the reason why UAE has left the OPEC. Now, OPEC global crude share, it fell to 36.7% in 2025 as well. Now, when it comes to this news, it starts with Gulf within. So, Gulf within, that means that there is a division within the Gulf nations, and the differences between the US and Saudi that are over Iran, that are over Israel, and also the production strategy that have been pinpointed by this editorial column. Yes. Right, Vikas. All right. Now, OPEC was founded in 1916 Baghdad, and when it comes to India, India is a net oil importer. And then OPEC Plus was founded when the Russia and the OPEC nation, along with the other nations, they started this large grouping that started in 2016 for the stability of the oil prices. Now, over here, UAE differs with the Saudi. All right, UAE differs with Saudi over different aspects, whether it is on the Yemen, whether it is on Sudan, or also because of its Israel ties, because UAE has close ties with Israel as well. At the same time, when it comes to the largest oil producer in the world, that is US, it is producing 13.6 million barrels per day. And ultimately, it is non-OPEC nation, and US has already, or it has said that the OPEC should be banned. All right, the OPEC should not be there. Everybody should be, they should be able to produce as much as they want. At the same time, when it comes to UAE leaving OPEC, this is also because UAE seeks closer ties with Israel, and it is also not uncomfortable, or it is not comfortable with the Gulf consensus that is over on the Gaza that we have seen. All right, as the exam is getting closer, I feel less like studying and more sleepy. All right, Kundan. So this happens. All right, this happens. Don't worry. All right, yes, Brent oil is the standard for the crude oil prices which are there in the globe. All right. Then when it comes to the political implications, when we see UAE leaving OPEC, so ultimately there will be fractures that will be there within the OPEC, and that will lead to the fractures of the cohesion between the different nations which are there in OPEC as well. The Saudi Arabia hegemony had been challenged by the leaving of UAE from the OPEC nations. At the same time, UAE can now ramp up its production, 1 million barrel per day, and that will lead to global oil price pressure that will be downward. All right, so this will be an implication that we will see in the long term. All right, the implication that is when there will be more production, so there will be more supply in the globe, and that will lead to lesser of the pressure on the oil prices. For India, the short-term gains will be that there will be high prices because of the closure of the Hormuz. But later on in the long term, UAE will have, or we can have more supply from the UAE, and that will lead to competitive sourcing for India as well. At the same time, UAE aligns with Washington or with US, all right? And the Trump is pushing for more pump, that is more production of the petroleum, and thereby this decision of the UAE, it also aligns with the strategy of US or America as well. But at the same time, when UAE will be producing more, that will lead to more of emission, and this contradicts with the targets of the Paris Agreement. But at the same time, we have seen that US is now no more concerned about the production of the fossil fuels, and they want to build their their economy. And that is the reason we have seen that in the COP30 that happened in Belém, Brazil. All right, in Belém, Brazil, you must have seen that US has withdrawn itself from COP30. All right, there were no major leaders from USA that have attended COP30. So now, when it comes to USA is not paying much of the obligation towards the environmental treaty, and that is again one of the important things that you can note where the stand of the US is moving towards. Direct supply to India from UAE bypassing OPEC, right? All right. Now, when it comes to India, so India is the UAE's largest trade partner, and in 2023-24, the total trade between both of the countries was $83 billion. And there is a CEPA, that is Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement, that both the countries signed in 2022. And India's oil import from UAE, they are very less. It is just about 5% of the total imports that we do. It is not dominant, but again, when the UAE will be producing more, this trade between UAE and India, it may rise higher as well. Then there is a national oil company of UAE, that is Abu Dhabi National Oil Company. This has also done investment in India. All right, it has partnered with Saudi Aramco, and it has, it is investing in the proposed 44 billion integrated complex for the petroleum refinery at the Ratnagiri in Maharashtra. So UAE is also, or the companies of UAE, they are also, they are investing in India, and again, that is again a plus point that we can see over here. US also withdrew from 66 major organizations, including Gavi, right? If Trump had died that day, such a situation would not have arisen. May happen. Anything can happen. All right, now coming back to the next news that we have today in front of us, it is about the International Labor Day that we have or that we celebrate every year on 1st of May. And this relates to India's labor code, also about the crisis that we had in Noida as well. So these are the two important news article that relates to the International Labor Day. Mr. President is enjoying his tenure, right? This is the last tenure, and he wants to be the one who is remembered in the history. Even yesterday, what happened was that Trump was giving a statement in a press conference, and there he said that I was the one who have stopped 8 wars globally. All right, again, he have reiterated that he is the one, he has stopped 8 of the global wars, and thereby, again, the claim of the Trump that he had previously that I should be given the Nobel Prize, it is again at the surface. All right, good morning, Kaizen, and it's okay. All right, yes. All right, so these are the two important news that pertains to the Labor Day that we celebrate every year on 1st of May. This is the International Labor Day that we are talking about, and this had started when it comes to India. In India, it was in 1923 that the first trade union was, it was made. Although when it comes to Trade Union Act, the Trade Union Act was in 1926, and it is already 100 years, when it comes to the Trade Union Act in India. So we have already been 100 years, and the first trade union was set up in Madras. All right. And when it comes to the Madras Labor Union in 1918, so in 1918, it was set up by Bahman Wadia. That is again important because, when it comes to Bahman Wadia, you could be asked who was the one who led the, or the first trade union. All right, it was Madras Trade Union, and this was set up by, or it was started by Bhanwar. Now over here, these two articles, when we combine it, yes, when we combine it, so Noble will run away from Trump. Oh, all right. All right, so these two of the news, they are important. Again, they talk about the unrest that we have seen in Noida just few days before. All right, and this Noida garment workers, they have, on 13th of April 2026, they demanded that their pay should be raised to 20,000 per month. That should be the minimum wage. The UP government, it gave 21% hike, and the wage was increased to 13,690 rupees, which the workers, they have rejected. At the same time, there is another incident as well that these two of the articles they talk about. That is the incident that happened at Vedanta Singitarai in Chhattisgarh on 14th of April. Over here, what happened was there was a boiler blast, and that led to the death of 20 of the people that were there working, and all were the contractual workers. So over here, these two of the articles, they pertain, or they talk about the 4 of the labor codes which were they were passed and they were enforced on 21st of November 2025. So they replaced the 29 laws that are there in our country, and these codes are code on wages, the industrial relations code that absorbed, again, please remember the Trade Union Act had been absorbed under the industrial relations code. All right, then we have Social Security Code of 2020, and also Occupational Safety, Health and Working Conditions Code 2020 as well. Yes, there were incidents in the fireworks industry as well, in the factories as well, that we have seen in Tamil Nadu and in Kerala, both the regions. All right, now what are the key changes? All right, the key changes that had been done after absorbing the Trade Union Act into Industrial Relation Act. All right, so now in the Industrial Relation Act, you can see that the retrenchment or the layoff permission threshold had been increased from 100 to 300 workers. Now, the minimum workers that are required in an industry is 300. If the workers are more than 300, only then they need to seek the permission from the government in the case of layoff or retrenchment. Where can I find the PDF of the class? Night Sky. The PDF is available on Telegram at the rate BHANWAR_StudyIQ. All right. So this is the Telegram channel, and it is available on this Telegram channel. All right, just a second. I will write it. Sorry. All right. Please remember that there is N also, BHANWAR_StudyIQ. All right. This is the Telegram channel. Mandatory gratuity amount to be given after 1 year and not 5 years now. That's true. But at the same time, what are the key changes that when we talk about? Because today we are talking about the International Labour Day. And ultimately, what are the changes that had been done when it comes to the complete, changes when it comes to the trade unions? So over here, the retrenchment or the layoff permission. Now, earlier, if there were 100 or more than 100 of the workers, all right, so then only the government permission was required for retrenchment or layoff. But now the threshold had been raised to 300. So now the factories, the companies which have less than 300 of the workers, they do not need government's permission. Again, this is against the workers. At the same time, when it comes to the factory definition, earlier it was 10 workers, all right, that was with power. But now it has been raised to 20 workers with power, all right, or 40 workers without power. Now again, what will happen? What will happen over here is, what is the implication is the smaller industry. The smaller industry which have less number of the people or the workers which are there, now they will be unregulated. All right, they will be unregulated, and again the hazards or the occupational safety will not be in the place that we will see. At the same time, there is again, when it comes to strike notice, earlier it was 15 days. Now this has been raised like 4 times. That is 60 days maximum validity had been prescribed under the Industrial Relations Code. And when it comes to inspection, earlier the inspection was unannounced, but now this has been randomized on web-based kind of platform, and there is Shram Suvidha portal that is being launched, and according to Shram Suvidha portal, the inspection will be conducted. All right. Also, when it comes to gig and platform workers, please remember this very well. All right, gig and platform workers, they had been not mentioned in the Industrial Relations Code 2020. But when it comes to the Social Security, they had been provided with the Social Security under the Code of Social Security 2020. Again, very important where UPSC could trap you. All right. At the same time, when it comes to the constitutional provision related to the workers, so we have Article 19(1)(c) that provides for the freedom to form association or unions in India. This is a fundamental right. Article 23, it says that there is a prohibition on any kind of forced labor. All right. Also, Article 24, it prohibits the child labor, and below the 14 years of age, the child, they cannot be employed in any of the factories. All right. Then we have Article 41 that provides for the right to work under the directive principle of state policy. Then Article 43 provides for decent living wages for the workers. Again, it is directive principle. And Article 43A also provides for workers' participation in management. That is again a directive principle. Now over here, what can happen is, all right, you may be asked a question about this in your prelims. So again, important for your upcoming prelims. All right, now coming to the global context. If you'll see the global context of the labor union, so according to the ILO Convention 81, it requires that there should be unannounced inspection, because if you are conducting inspection announced, so this is just like inspection that has or that used to happen in the schools, or we had the inspections that used to happen in the armed forces. All right, so when there is the announced inspection, what happens is that everything looks like it is good. So ultimately there has to be the inspections. If the inspections are there, so there should be the unannounced inspections, so that the actual conditions can be judged by these unannounced inspections. All right. At the same time, when it comes to ILO Convention 87 and 98, they are for freedom of association and even for the collective bargaining. All right. And when it comes to the total conventions that ILO has released, so there are total 189 of the ILO convention, out of which we have ratified only 47 of them. According to Niti Aayog report, in 2020, there were 7.7 million platform workers, and now this the number of the workers that will be also higher. All right. Now, when it comes to the changes, so there is Labor Code of 2020. Now, the factory threshold has been raised. The factory threshold has been raised, and what will happen is that the smaller factories, they will go unregulated, the safety will be negligent, and again, there are the chances that the industrial accidents, they will increase. All right. Although at the same time, when it comes to the strike, so there is now the notice of 60 days, and over here, what will happen? The effective right to strike that have been curtailed by this restriction. What will happen? The workers, they will hit the streets. There will be lathi charge that we have seen in Noida. And again, the families will be displaced because of this as well. When it comes to the industries, so these two articles, they highlight that in Chhattisgarh itself, there were 296 industrial deaths in 3 years. And in India, there had been total 3,331 factory deaths between the period of 2018 to 2020. So that means the average is 3 deaths per day. And only 14 of the people where these deaths had happened. So only 14 people had been imprisoned till now. All right, in this period. And also when it comes to the workplace fatalities, so we have seen that in 2024 itself, there were more than 400 workplace fatalities that happened in India. All right, so this is another important news for our preparation. Now coming to the next important news that is in today's The Hindu, it is the free trade agreement that is between India and New Zealand. And over here, this article tells about the 6 key wins that is for India. All right, so this is again an editorial piece and again important. Now, when it comes to the India and New Zealand, so the free trade agreement had been concluded. This was concluded in December 2025. The negotiations were between, they were held between March to December 2025. Over here, this is the India's fastest free trade agreement where just a time period of 9 months was taken for the negotiation, and it is the first mover advantage that we have towards Oceania as well. Now, this aligns with our Viksit Bharat 2027 theme, and over here there is a strategic trade integration that we can see moving ahead, where we will see the India in 2047 as a Viksit Bharat. Now, these are the 6 of the wins that it says. Yes, these are the 6 key wins that this article lays down. The first one is that the speed. It is the fastest FTA, and it signals that new negotiating capacity is developing within the government framework. All right, the second win is about the talent mobility. There would be 5,000 professionals visas per year that had been agreed to upon. All right. So again, the professionals, which are from IT field, from engineering, from health, they would be granted visa for Australia, for New Zealand. All right. At the same time, there will be 1,000 work holiday visas for youth as well. All right. If you want to go for work as well as for holiday, so there would be 1,000 visas that will be provided for the youth as well to New Zealand. And also there is also the Ayush reciprocity that we have seen with the traditional health system that is there in New Zealand, and it is Maori. All right. Then the third win is about the capital inflow, because there would be infusion of $20 billion in the next 15 years by New Zealand. And by this infusion of the $20 billion, there are various sectors that will, that will be improved. That is the agri-tech, the renewable energy, as well as the education as well. Krishna, okay. All right. Then the fourth win is about the dairy protection. Now, what we have done is that the milk or the dairy sector, it has been completely excluded. All right, when it comes to the fluid milk, the cheese, yogurt, they had been excluded from the concession. But at the same time, please remember that the infant formula, will be under the progressive access for over 7 years. So, infant formula is not excluded. All right, please remember this, very, very important. All right, at the same time, when it comes to GI protection, so New Zealand will amend its law within 18 months. And over here, this will be just same as the EU level of the protection for the Darjeeling tea, for the basmati rice, and the different geological indicator products that we have in India. All right. And also, when it comes to the sixth win, it is about the Oceania, that is the New Zealand. It will act as the regulatory reference point for the South Pacific and the Pacific Island countries as well. So, over here, this is very important that the India's trade policy, it has shifted. All right, the trade policy has shifted, and we are seeing this. Today, I entered your parallel universe. All right. All right, so we are seeing over here that there is cautious tariff negotiation that had happened, and it has protected India's dairy industry that we are seeing right now. Yes, geographical or geological indication, right. All right, the next news is about the revenue deficit states. All right, the revenue deficit states as well as the fiscal federalism in India. Again, it is very important news article. Again, very, very important. All right. All right. So when it comes to this news, so Finance Ministry of the Union, all right, they have done the complete monthly economic review for the April 2026, and it flags that there are 9 out of 18 large states which are in revenue deficit for 2026-27. Now, revenue deficit, it exists because the recurring expenditure that the state has. The recurring expenditure is because of the salary, it is because of the pension, the subsidies, and also the interest payment. When it exceeds the revenue receipt, all right, when it exceeds the revenue receipt, it is at that point of time that the state or the country, it gets into the revenue deficit. All right, the revenue receipts are basically the earning of the state. That is, it is from taxes and from fees. It does not include any kind of, loans. All right. So that is again very, very important. Yes, more expenditure than income. So that is where we have the revenue deficit. Now we know that there is the external fiscal shock that is accelerating the situation in India, and that is the West Asian crisis that is in front of us. Now over here, what is the worst? The worst of the states when it comes to the revenue deficit, you can see that the Himachal Pradesh is at the worst. It is minus 2.4%. Then comes Punjab, all right, minus 2.2, and it has highest interest to revenue ratio. Then Kerala, and then we have Andhra Pradesh and Rajasthan as well. All right, then there is Haryana, Karnataka and Maharashtra and Chhattisgarh. So these are the major states which are under revenue deficit. Now at the same time, certain states are also revenue surplus. All right, like for example, we have Odisha, we have Jharkhand and Uttar Pradesh as well. We have Goa as well, Gujarat, Uttarakhand, Telangana, Bihar. These are, or they are the revenue surplus states which are there. Now over here, the finance ministry have said that for the revenue states, revenue deficit states, they may come to the center if they need any kind of, any kind of help. All right. At the same time, Tamil Nadu and Bengal, they had not been included in the complete review because of they have presented only they have presented the interim budgets, and the complete budgets had not been presented by both these states because they are the states which are or over where the elections will be held. Now, when it comes to revenue deficit, so revenue deficit is not equal to fiscal deficit. All right. When it comes to revenue deficit and fiscal deficit, they are different. And when it comes to India, so in India, we have FRBM Act that was initiated in 2003. Now, this is where we have the target for the fiscal consolidation. And yes, that is what I said. Tamil Nadu and West Bengal had not been included. All right. So over here under this FRBM Act, the target is that the central deficit, it should be of 3% GDP. All right. Over the N.K. Singh committee report, it was also laid down that the central government debt, the debt should be equal to or less than 40% of the GDP, and the fiscal deficit, it should be below 4.5% of the GDP by 2025-26. All right. There is an escape clause as well. The escape clause that is there is under the FRBM Act, under the section 4.2. There is an escape clause that the government, it can deviate through the targets, but it can happen only under the special circumstances. The special circumstances like for example war or external aggression. So in that condition, the government, it can deviate from the different targets which have been set for the fiscal deficit, for the debt also. At the same time, when it comes to Fiscal Responsibility Budgetary Management Act. All right. When it comes to the 15th Finance Commission, the recommendation for which it is from 2021 to 2026, it has given the post-devolution revenue deficit grants as well, PDRDG, to 17 of the states. All right. So again, it is very important to note over here that the 16th Finance Commission have denied this post-devolution revenue deficit grants because it wants the state to be fiscally healthy. All right. Now, when it comes to the implication, the states with the revenue deficit, they spend more than 15% of the revenue on the interest, and that is why they are revenue deficit. At the same time, there are few degrees of the freedom that they get. All right, because of course there is the interest payment that is there, and the interest had to be paid. So they have lesser degree of the freedom, and ultimately they cannot counter this cyclically spend of the money that they are doing on the interest payment. All right, and also they may demand higher central transfer that will again strain the center's finances as well. All right, there would be also that they may cut the capital expenditure. But if the capital expenditure is cut, capital expenditure is majorly on the infrastructure. So ultimately, if the capital expenditure will be cut, so it will affect the infrastructural growth in the complete state. All right. And of course, when it comes to Hormuz crisis, so we are seeing that because of the Hormuz crisis, the import bill is rising and the GST revenues, they are volatile right now. And again, that is impacting the complete economic scenario that we are seeing today. Yes, the vertical devolution had been kept at 41% by 16th Finance Commission as well. All right. So over here, these are the different type of deficit. When it comes to revenue deficit, It is revenue expenditure minus the revenue receipts. And that is how we calculate the revenue deficit. Then when it comes to the fiscal deficit, it is the total expenditure minus the total receipt. All right. At the same time, when it comes to primary deficit, it is the fiscal deficit minus the net interest liability that a country has. So these are the three different type of deficit when it comes to the budgets. All right, you can answer this question over here. Revenue deficit in a state budget means, all right, first, capital expenditure exceeds capital receipts, recurring expenditure exceeds recurring receipts, total expenditure exceeds total revenue, and debt exceeds GDP. Yes, Satya. Right. So the answer would be B. That is true. Over here, revenue deficit means that the recurring expenditure, it exceeds the recurring receipts. Next question. Assertion A. Sorry. Assertion A. High revenue deficit states are less resilient to fiscal shocks. Reason are such states already spend a large share of revenue receipts on interest payment and other recurring obligations. Choose the correct answer. Choose the correct answer. Over here again we have the another question that is in our front, and what will be the correct answer? What will be the right answer here? The right answer is yes. The right answer is that both A and R are true, and R explains A. Now again, one more question about the 16th Finance Commission. Now again, you could be asked about 16th Finance Commission in your upcoming UPSC prelims. Alright, very important. You must revise the 16th Finance Commission recommendation which are there, and it says, the question says, it has recommended increasing the state shares in the divisible pool to 42%. A new criterion of contribution to GDP has been introduced with a 10% weightage, and it has recommended that states discontinue all off-budget borrowings. Which of the statements given above are correct? So what will be the right answer? Yes, I have told you that it is, or it has kept the devolution share unchanged, and it is at 41%. So first is incorrect, but the rest two are correct. So it is 2 and 3, that is B. L is the right answer. First is incorrect, right? All right. Now coming to the next important news, this pertains to northeast of India, and when it comes to northeastern peace progress, this is a very major news that we are seeing over here. All right, yes. So when it comes to the major news, that is the Mizoram, it has been declared insurgency free. Now what has happened in Mizoram? So in Mizoram, the Chief Minister, that is Laldu Homa, he have declared that the state is insurgency free, and the last insurgent group that is there in the state, that is HPCD or Hamar People's Convention Democratic, it has laid down its arms. The 43 members, including the leader of HPCD, that is Lalming Thanga Sanate, he have surrendered the arms. The peace accord in Mizoram, it was signed on 14th of April 2026, and the arms laying ceremony, it was held yesterday. Alright, and at the same time, this was at Sesawang, that is in Aizwal. Now over here, HPCD, they have demanded an autonomous district council for the Hamar community under 6th schedule. Alright, at the same time, when it comes to Mizoram, it is the northeastern state where the Mizo National Front, MNF, was a major insurgency group. And this insurgency had ended in 1986. Alright, in 1986, when the Mizo Accord was signed. And please remember that Mizo Accord was the first Northeast Peace Accord or deal that was done during the time when Rajiv Gandhi was the Prime Minister of the nation. Alright, Hamar tribe is part of Zuo Kuki ethnic group, and this is related to Mizo identity as well. When it comes to 6th schedule, over in the 6th schedule, the autonomous district councils can be formed for the tribal areas. And 6th schedule is applicable only to 80 mm, that is Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram. And Chief Minister Laldu Homa, he is the former IPS officer, but then he resigned from the IPS so that he can mediate the MNF peace in the Mizoram. Alright, so over here Mizoram, that is called as the land of the highland people, it has been declared insurgency free. The literacy rate of Mizoram is 91%, that is second highest in India, and also the capital, please remember, it is Aizawl. Now when it comes to Mizoram, it is very important that this is the last domino that had fallen in Mizoram, and Mizoram is now fully peaceful. And this is precedent for the other northeast conflicts that we are seeing in the region as well. Alright, yes. At the same time, this is a proof that the negotiated peace, it works over any kind of military operation. Alright, this is again a peace, and we can take the lessons from the Mizoram so that we can bring peace and stability in the northeast region as well. Alright, at the same time, our identity had been preserved within the Mizo framework, and this is where we can see that there had been ethnic reconciliation, and this is that is what I am saying, that the lessons must be taken. Lessons must be taken in the states where we are seeing that there are the ethnic crisis that is happening. Why does no one talk about Manipur? I always talk about Manipur. I always talk about everything that is happening in the country, and that is why I am talking about right now that this is what is required. The ethnic reconciliation is required in Manipur as well. And ultimately, because now Manipur is insurgent free, now these security forces, they will be free. And this will improve the connectivity to the Myanmar border as well. And this will improve the relationship with the states as well in the region. Alright, now over here, again you have to remember these for your prelims. Article 244A is about the autonomous state that can be created within Assam for the tribal areas. Alright, this is Article 244A, and lots of people, they want that their own state, autonomous states within Assam as well. And again, this is a persistent challenge when it comes to Assam. Then there is 6th schedule. In 6th schedule, and also according to Article 244.2, please remember, Article 244.2, it provides for the autonomous district councils for the tribal areas of the 6th schedule. Alright, there is 244.1 as well. 244.1 is for the 5th schedule areas. Alright, it is for the 5th schedule areas. Now, when it comes to the states, I have told you in 6th schedule ATMM and Arunachal Pradesh, Nagaland and Manipur, they are not there in the 6th schedule states. Now, next important news that is there in our today's The Hindu is that should PIL jurisdiction be reconsidered. Alright, again, this is very important because when it comes to the news, so yesterday, while going through the Hindu analysis, we have seen that the Parliament, the Supreme Court, it had declined for enacting any kind of hate speech law. Alright, there was a PIL that the Supreme Court was hearing about hate speech, and it had said that this is a matter of legislation and let the Parliament decide. And that is why this article is there in our today's The Hindu. Yes, Justice P.N. Bhagwati and V.R. Krishna Iyer, they are the pioneer when it comes to the PIL or public interest litigation. Now, over here in Sabrimala reference, the Union government have already urged Supreme Court that it should reconsider the PIL framework. The government have cited that there is the arise of the agenda-driven litigation, and that is what is impacting the PIL. However, the Supreme Court have said that they will not do away with the PIL. Yes, father of PIL is P.N. Bhagwati, right? Alright. At the same time, the PIL, they emerged in the 1970s when the first case, the Husainara Khatun case in 1979 was heard, and it is where the locus standi, that is the person who had been aggrieved. You know, generally what happens is locus standi principle is that you have to appear in front of the court if you want to get the justice. So that was relaxed. And at the same time, the traditional rule is that locus standi should be there. Only aggrieved party could reach or approach the court for the complete justice. Alright, over here, this was the first case, Husainara Khatun versus Bihar, where the under trial prisoner's right was laid down, and it was the birth of PIL in India. Like I said, Justice P.N. Bhagwati and Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, they are the pioneers of the PIL, and Justice P.N. Bhagwati, he is aptly known as the father of PIL. Alright, we have seen different PILs which were filed by MC Mehta. All right, the MC Mehta versus Union of India, they were different of the environmental PILs over the pollution cases, and the right to clean and safer environment was laid down by the Supreme Court through these various PILs as well. At the same time, in 2001, Supreme Court had drawn the limits on the PIL jurisdiction under the Balco employers case, and when it comes to the PIL, it is extrapolation of habeas corpus. All right, habeas corpus is the, to have a body. It is a writ jurisdiction that is there. But at the same time, when it comes to PIL is basically where the rigid structure, it has been changed into a flexible modern tool that addresses the broader aspects of the personal liberty. It addresses the broader aspects of the civil rights and even of the judicial and the personal accountability as well. Now, over here, what are the key concerns when it comes to the PIL? So, when it comes to the key concerns, the first one is the ambush PILs. All right, they are filed so that the genuine petitioners can be blocked. So, for blocking the genuine petitioners, these are filed in the Supreme Court. All right, and this is basically for the party purposes or the partisan motives that are there. Then there are police-centric disputes which are there. When it comes to police-centric disputes, the courts, they lack that kind of institutional capacity so that they can gain the complex clarity or the complex policy that is required. All right, again, this is a very important that there are police-centric disputes. They had been filed because of the PIL. Then, when it comes to amicus curiae, amicus curiae is basically the court's friend. All right, a court's friend is called as amicus curiae, who provides the court with the right direction, with the right kind of interpretation as well. So, when it comes to amicus curiae, so they have been overreached, and over here we have seen that the amicus curiae who had been appointed by the court as their own friend, it becomes the petitioner for the counsel. There are compliance gaps as well, because when it comes to the contempt, so contempt had been rarely invoked, and there is culture of impunity that is there in the in our judicial system. Now, there are certain things that, PIL should be there or PIL should not be there. We have to balance both of these. All right. When it comes to the PIL, so it gives the access to the marginalized people which are there. All right. The people who cannot afford the court. All right. Getting the judgment or getting the orders or getting the justice is quite as costly as it is, getting the, any kind of basic needs. So again, when it comes to these marginalized sectors or the sections, for them, it is easier to get the justice through the PIL means. At the same time, they also guarantee that there is the constitutional framework that is given to them, or the constitutional guarantee is being enforced to these marginalized sections. All right. At the same time, there is also, when it comes to the PIL, if the PIL is taken back, all right, if the PIL is taken back, so what will happen? So victims, they will lack the means to fight for their cases. All right, the third party standing, it will be valid, and ultimately there will be third parties that will be standing in the event of the PIL that becomes, that is taken away. Now, at the same time, when it comes to PIL, over here, what has happened in the previous times, that because of the PIL, we are talking about judicial activism. All right, and sometimes what happens is that because of PIL led to judicial activism, and there is a very thin line where this judicial activism, it becomes the judicial overreach. Now, when it becomes the overreach, so then it starts moving into the executive and the legislative domain. All right, we have seen lots of the orders, and through those orders, the laws had been implemented in India. So that is not the domain of the Supreme Court. But at the same time, we have the theory of checks and balances as well when it comes to India's parliament. All right, we have the theories of checks and balances. The Supreme Court, it keeps the legislative and executive in balance, and in turn, the executive and the legislative, they keep a balance on Supreme Court as well. So over here, so we have a theory, the theory of checks and balances as well. But at the same time, judicial overreach is also what has happened because of the PIL, and the PIL on hate speech. We have seen that over here Supreme Court have restrained itself and it has said that the Supreme Court is not going to pronounce any legal, any law over the hate speech. Hello Anuj, good morning, and good morning CMD. Right. Now over here there are certain reforms which had been suggested. Now again, this is very important because when it comes to your UPSC, alright, a way forward is very important. If you are writing way forward in your answers, so then you will get or you will fetch good marks. Now over here, what are the reforms that had been suggested? That is that the PIL must be restricted to, or the challenge elected, they should be restricted to only the enacted laws. Right. I was thinking about it. Thank you. All right. So when it comes to the PIL, so the reforms that had been suggested, it is that the PILs, they should be only restricted to the enacted laws or the executive action or inaction only. That means that not separate legislation should be there, or the judicial overreach should not be there. All right, so that is the one of the reform that has been suggested. Then when it comes to the PIL, they should not direct the parliament to enact laws. Like for example, the PIL should not be filed for directing the Supreme Court, that it should direct the parliament so that the Uniform Civil Code could be applied in India. Alright, so again, this is again what the reform suggests. Then when it comes to the rules of Supreme Court 2013, so it says that the petitioner, while filing the PIL, they must identify the fundamental rights which had been violated and for which cases this PIL had been filed. Alright, at the same time, the courts, they should impose the cost to deter the frivolous findings or filings as well. And the amicus curiae, again, very important, the guidelines are needed. Currently, there are undefined role of amicus curiae, and again, we need to define the role. We need to lay down the perfect guidelines. That is again what is the required need of the hour. Again, very important. Next, again, very important news. It is very important for your prelims, upcoming prelims as well. And this is about green methanol. Or green methanol is, where we are turning the complete disadvantage or bane into the marine fuel. All right, now this news talks about the first green methanol plant that is being coming up at Deen Dayal Port Authority at Kandla, Kutch. All right. When it comes to Deen Dayal Port Authority, we all know that it is also called as the birth child of partition. All right. Why called birth child of partition? Because the Karachi port, it went to Pakistan. All right. Karachi port went to Pakistan, and because there was no port on the west side. Yes, it is in Gujarat. So over here, there was a need for the development of a port, and therefore this port, Kandla port, it was developed as a major port after the partition, and that is why it is called as birth child of the partition. Now over here, the methanol plant is upcoming. It is the first green methanol plant, and over here, the methanol will be produced by the Prosopis julifloro. Now this is also called as Gandho Bawal. That is the top 100 invasive species worldwide. All right, so this is invasive species that is there, and ultimately what has happened is that this species net zero carbon emission, right? All right, so this species or this plant will be used for producing the methanol. The capacity of the plant will be 5 tons per day, and it is developed by Thermax Energy along with Ankur Scientific for the Deen Dayal Port Authority. Now this will also push the policy towards the green ports policy on the western coast, and what will happen here is that the first process will be gasification. All right, there will be gasification, then there will be pyrolysis, that is without oxygen, and through gasification and pyrolysis the syngas will be produced. Then this syngas will be changed into methanol, and that is the process how this methanol will be, yes, in 2018 it was asked. All right. Now, when it comes to Prosopis julifloro, This is basically a invasive species. It is from Mexico. It was introduced by British in 1920s for greening of Delhi, and then Gujarat Forest Department as well in 1961, so that the run salt desert, it could be controlled. But then what happened was that this invasive species, it had crowded out the native grasses. And right now in Kutch's Banni grassland, you will find that there is no other grass except from the Prosopis julifloro. Alright, now it is under the top 100 invasive species globally, and it has also spread it to 14 of the different Indian states as well. Now, why this is important is, you must have seen in your UPSC, what happens is, right, this is recycling economy, or the cycle economy that we say. Now, what happens in UPSC is, you will find that there are some time of the questions that are there are the names. All right, there are like 3 or 4 names, and you have been asked that why they had been in news recently. So when it comes to Prosopis julifloro, that is known as Gando Bawal in Kutch. All right, along with this, it is also called as Vilayati Kika in North India, and also Simai Karuvelam in Tamil. So it may happen that you will find a question like this, that Gando Bawal, Vilayati Kika, Sima Karuvelam. So they had been in news recently, and what they denotes or what they relates to. Again, very important. Yes, circular economy. All right. Again, when it comes to the methanol process, so methanol process, the forming or the the forming of the methanol will be through 2 of the steps that will be taken. The first step will be gasification, that will be done by Ankur Scientific, and then the syngas will be produced. In syngas, there is hydrogen and carbon dioxide along with carbon monoxide. Then in the second step, the syngas will be converted to methanol by the plant of Thermex, the Thermex energy. All right. So this is again very important, and this is very important for the green hydrogen pathway as well. All right. Now, why methanol is important for shipping? So when it comes to IMO 2020 rules, it says that the sulfur cap for the bunker oil is at 0.5%. For IMO 2030 rules, it says that there should be 40% greenhouse reduction target as compared to the 2008 baseline. Now, when it comes to this green methanol, so there will be carbon dioxide that will be cut up to 95%, nitrogen oxide emissions by 80%. All right. At the same time, it will eliminate sulfur oxides and particulate matter as well. So therefore, this is a green energy or green fuel that is there, and again important for the shipping industry. All right. When it comes to the significance, so now we have seen that the invasive species, they will be removed. The invasive species, they will be removed. There will be carbon neutral marine fuel, that is a circular economy had been achieved in India. All right, the Indian ports, they will gain the first mover advantage in the green fuel bunkering, and also it will reduce the import of heavy fuel oil, that is HFO, for the shipping as well. Yes, and at the same time, when it comes to the other agricultural residue, like for example, we have bagasse, we have cotton stalk as well. They could work as additional feedstock, and ultimately that could displace the import dependency that we have right now when it comes to the oil imports. All right, so therefore this has maximum potential, and again it is an alternative fuel that could be developed in India. All right, now over here again this is a question that you can you can try. Sacred groves are important because they preserve biodiversity, support indigenous knowledge system, are always government managed forest. Select the correct answers. What will be the right answer? Yes, they are not always government managed, but yes, preserve biodiversity, support indigenous knowledge. So answer will be A, that is 1 and 2 only. Now the next news is about the first Jammu-Srinagar railway as well as the Ladakh developments. Alright, both the news are again very important. When it comes to railway, there is a first railway that had been flagged off from Jammu to Srinagar, And Home Minister Amit Shah is also on the visit to Ladakh right now. Now, Railway Minister Ashwani Vaishnav, he have flagged the first direct Jammu-Srinagar train service. The very important thing is that the extended Vande Bharat Express had been used for this purpose, and this is the world's highest railway operation at this altitude that you will see. Over here, very important thing is that the Udhampur-Srinagar-Baramulla rail link had been constructed. This USBRL is the national project that will connect Kashmir to the rest of the India's railway network, and this had been at 28,000 crore rupees. Alright, the complete USBRL, this was at 28,000 crore rupees. The total length is 272 kilometers. And this is part of the Golden Quadrilateral. The Golden Quadrilateral, that is right. It is part of the Golden Quadrilateral rail network expansion that we are seeing in India. So, Udhampur-Srinagar-Baramulla rail link had been used. The key engineering in this complete rail link is the Chenab Bridge. Again, when it comes to Chenab Bridge, it is the world's highest railway bridge at the height of 359 meters. And this event, or on this occasion, the Chief Minister of Jammu Kashmir, Umar Abdullah, said that it is an historic day. At the same time, in Ladakh, Home Minister Amit Shah, he have visited Leh, and he will attend the first international exposition of Buddha's relic on today, that is Buddha Purnima, on 1st of May. This is the first such exposition of the Buddha relics that is being conducted in India, and the relics will be displayed between 1st May to 15th of May across Leh and Zaskar as well. Now, over here we have seen why this news is important, because there had been protests in Ladakh in September 2025 that have led to death of 4 of the people. And over here, the Ladakhis, they are demanding the statehood to the Ladakh as well as the 6th schedule inclusion of Ladakh as well. Alright, also there had been 5 new districts which had been created. Alright, so again this is very important, and Delhi Ladakh talks, they are scheduled for the 22nd May 2025 when the Ladakh or Leh apex body along with Kargil Democratic Alliance, they will participate for the talks that will be there between the central government and these organizations. Now, when it comes to the rail project, it signifies or integrates Jammu Kashmir with the national network of the railways, and it will boost the tourism and security as well. Now, Jammu Kashmir was the last state that was without railway connectivity to the rest of India, and this has ended that dilemma. When it comes to Amit Shah's visit, alright, so over here the Buddha's relic exposition is just equal, or this signifies the soft diplomacy as well as it will boost the religious tourism in the area, and the Ladakhi identity, it will be there on the world stage. Yes, it will benefit the citizens, but government may lose control there, right? Alright, at the same time, when it comes to Shah's visit to the Ladakh, it is basically where the center outreach is there after the September protests that could be seen in that particular aspect. Now, when it comes to the constitutional context, we have seen that Jammu Kashmir Reorganization Act was passed in 2019 that have created 2 of the union territories. The first one is Jammu Kashmir, that is with legislature, and the second one is Ladakh, that would be of or without legislature. Article 370 was abrogated on 5th of August 2019, and here we have seen that the Ladakh have demanded that there should be a complete statehood along with 6th schedule protection for the tribal areas. But right now the 6th schedule is applicable only to ATMM, that is Assam, Tripura, Meghalaya and Mizoram. At the same time, when it comes to the statehood of the Jammu Kashmir, so Supreme Court have ordered that restoration of the statehood should be at the earliest, and this judgment was in 2023 December. Yes, Hormuz is the largest, it is known for snow leopard as well, and it is the largest national park of India as well, Hormuz National Park. Yes. Now, the next news is again important. This is again about the Supreme Court judgment, and this is about, the amendment of the MTP law that is there in India. MTP stands for Medical Termination of Pregnancy, and here the Supreme Court have asked the Union government to amend the abortion law to remove the time limit on medical termination of unwanted pregnancies in case of minor rape victims. Over here, when it comes to the Supreme Court, it have asked the medical, or they have said that the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act 2021 was passed, and it has increased the time limit for legal abortion from 20 to 24 weeks for the survivors of rape, minors and women with the disabilities. But at the same time over here, Justice have said, or the Supreme Court have said, that the state and doctors, they cannot make decisions for the minor rape survivors. It should be left to the parents and the survivors. The Chief Justice of India here have called that the such of the time period or the to ensure that such cases are completed, there should be the time limit, it should be withdrawn. And also what should be done is that in the case of minor rape survivors, the case should be completed within a period as well. All right? Yes. Okay. Now, coming to the question over here, consider the following statements regarding the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act 2021. It allows for termination of pregnancy up to 24 weeks for rape survivors and minors. Beyond 24 weeks, termination is allowed only if a state-level medical board confirms substantial fetal abnormalities. The Act grants the father of fetus equal decision-making power in termination process. So what will be the right answer? What will be the correct answer here? So over here, this Act does not grant equal powers to the father, but the rest are true. So over here, answer will be A, that is 1 and 2 only. It will be A, not C. Alright, next question. With reference to MTP, that is Medical Termination of Pregnancy Amendment Act 2021, consider the following. Unmarried women are allowed to terminate a pregnancy up to 20 weeks on ground of contraceptive failure. For pregnancies between 20 to 24 weeks, the opinion of state-level medical board is mandatory. The names of women undergoing the procedure must be kept confidential. So what will be the right answer? Good morning, Mahesh. What will be the correct answer here? So the correct answer here will be that it does not require the medical board, is not mandatory. Alright. Because over here the time period had been raised from 20 to 24 weeks. So of course the state level medical board is not opinion, the opinion is not mandatory. The rest are true, 1 and 3. That is B. Again, answer is B here. Not D, B. Alright, these are the two questions that you can practice for your mains examination. The first question is, the judicial innovation of public interest litigation (PIL) in India is a double-edged sword that has balanced access to justice with the risk of overreach. Discuss in context of recent concerns regarding agenda-driven litigation. Alright, this could be asked in your GS paper 2 or in GS paper 4 as well. The next question is, the transition to the 4 new labor codes marks a shift from protectionism to facilitation. Critically evaluate the impact of the transition on the safety and rights of informal sector workers. Again, these are two important questions and this is what we have covered so far. Now, when it comes to the axis of or the nexus of Iran, Hormuz and UAE, we have seen that they connect to the energy security. UAE have exited from the OPEC and this will impact the India's oil imports as well. There is a trade crisis as well. So again, when it comes to multi-actor, UPSC always love the multi-actor geopolitical questions and you should prepare this very well. Now, when it comes to the next labor codes and worker rights, so again, there are 4 labor codes which had been notified in November 2025 and they replaced 29 laws. The OSHWC, that is Organizational Safety, Health and Working Condition threshold had been changed. The strike notice period have increased to 60 days. Now, the gig workers which had been unprotected, they had been also included. Again, this is where the paper, in your paper for GS3, you could be asked in the examination. And then when it comes to India's New Zealand free trade agreement and along with disruption at the Strait of Hormuz, this is the dual angle for the energy and trade. We have protected our dairy segment or dairy sector in the free trade agreement. Again, GI products had been included Ayush had been reciprocated by the New Zealand as well. And also you can combine this with Hormuz crisis for the complete balance of payment impact that it will have, or the current account deficit that is there. Who is responsible for permission pregnancy? Satya, basically it is that if it is more than 24 weeks, all right, so then it is the state medical board opinion that is required. But up to 24 weeks, there is no state medical board opinion that is required for termination of the pregnancy. All right, now over here we have these two important courses in which right. All right, now these are the two important courses in which you can enroll. The first one is the UPSC IS 2027 Resolution P2I batch, and this batch will start from 7th of May. All right, and also we have the another course over here. This is for 2028. So if you are preparing for 2027 or for 2028, you can enroll into any of the courses, and again you can enjoy your complete preparation with StudyIQ platform. All right, so that would be all in today's session. Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, Ramu and Krishna and others who have joined me over here on the platform. Thank you very much, Satya and Madhav as well. Thank you very much. Vikas, thank you. Yes, I'll see you at 5 o'clock. All right, at 5 o'clock, at 5 p.m., I'll be live again. All right, I'll be live again for today's important session, that is species in news. We'll be covering more than 50% of the species today, and this is very important for your upcoming prelims. All right, so I'll see you in the session at 5 p.m. All right, thank you very much, guys. Bye-bye, take care, Jai Hind, and we'll see you at 5 o'clock. All right, Madhav, thank you.